So yeah, a big welcome to our free webinar, a good chance for an opportunity to discuss lots of pertinent issues in franchising. So please feel free to put your questions in the app and we will have a question point a little bit later on. So I'm going to hand over to Julie because she's kicking us off.
Great.
Although
Morning,
I
Rich.
I am slide person. Hang on. There we go.
You are indeed. Yeah. Morning, everyone. Morning, Rachel. So obviously, I think some people on the call today already kind of know me, but for people who don't and people who may be watching the recording, I run the franchise company. We've been operating for 30 years. We're a British Franchise Association affiliate member. And before that, I had operational experience in two different franchise systems, one of which we'll come on to talk a bit about later, which was the Print Group, which was one of the founding members of the British Franchise Association. And then I went into the telecom sector and set up a retail telecoms franchise in the earlier stages of liberalisation of the telecoms market, which we grew from 3 to 41 in a period of 5.5 years. My big thing in terms of franchising is always about do it properly. You're never going to do it once because you've always got to change it, adapt it, amend it, but do it properly at the beginning and do it in a way that is commercially viable and ethical, and that's it.
Mm. Yeah, and introducing myself again, I've met some of you through my time at Bright and Beautiful, which was the franchise network that I founded, scaled across the UK over 8 years of franchising. At that point, when I achieved an exit, I sold the business to the Neighbourly Group. Some of you, I'm sure, are aware of the Neighbourly Group. They own lots of well-known household residential franchise brands. And at that point, I'd grown the business to 55 franchises from Edinburgh down to Plymouth, over 5 million turnover. And, that had been an exciting and challenging 8 years, but I enjoyed the journey, but I was ready with my exit in mind. And now since that point, I did a master's in leadership. Well, I did actually, I won't miss out the fact that for a couple of years, it was a life-changing sum. We could travel the world and do lots of fun things as a family. Then I did a master's in leadership and launched Chromia Group to help other entrepreneurs and franchisors grow their businesses. And so I help people get their business model right, whether they're a well-established business, which usually they are, or a newer business, helping them align their business model, spending time to then work on the business, breaking through their barriers, building their team, building their franchise network, and ultimately building a long-term valuable exit. And that means different things to different people, which I'll talk about shortly.
Um, in terms of where we are and what we do and what we've seen over the years of running the franchise company, we help companies start and develop and get the systems right, and then people go off and either do their own thing with our support, without our support, whatever basically. But we always keep in contact with the people that we're working with. And one of the things that comes back time and time again is, particularly in the early stage of development, but it can happen at any stage of development, people do get really overawed. They potentially lose direction. They really start to feel very tired and question whether they should be doing this. And a lot of that in terms of when we start to help people and support people to work through it. And obviously Rachel and I have had many discussions about this as preparation for the work that we're doing, and based upon Rachel's experience as well. A lack of clarity and becoming unsure basically about what you're doing, whether it's the right thing to do. And again, in terms of understanding what happens as to reproduce that, ultimately, many franchisors end up doing too much, or they either end up doing too much, or they don't do enough, they don't understand the role. And if they do start to do too much, generally what happens is that they become a block neck for decisions and performance. and the resources that they have within the business. And again, whether you're an early stage franchisor, whether you're going on to, develop and grow your network, or whether you're looking at maturity, it's all about using the resources that you've got effectively, because everyone has limited resources, particularly at the moment in the economic climate that we're working in. So the resources that a franchisor has got have got to be used effectively. And the whole essence of franchising, in terms of why we do it and how we do it, is in general terms, the franchisor does it once, and the franchisor develops the systems. And then the franchisees, whether you've got 10, 15, 20 or 100, can actually use the learning and the development that's being carried out by the franchisor. If you become the bottleneck, that's not going to happen. So it's recognizing as early as possible, what's happening within the business, and starting to make adjustments and changes so that the franchisees and the network can grow and develop effectively, and you don't stop them doing that, basically. Going back to some of the things that I witnessed on a personal level. So Prontoprint was part of the founding members of the British Franchise Association, but it ultimately became a network of franchise brands, which included Poppies, which is still around today, domestic and commercial cleaning, and another brand called Fudge Kitchen, which did see the light of day, but only for a short period of time. And then it was withdrawn from the network because it was deemed not to be effective for the network to operate, basically. But again, looking at the growth of that business, the impact of, in effect, to some degree, not doing things properly, because Prontoprint was a great learning curve in terms of looking at how to do things, but also looking at things that were done to sometimes achieve corporate aims, but ultimately not for the benefit of the network and the franchisees. Things in terms of, again, that can go wrong when the business is starting to really grow and develop and ultimately mature vary according to the success of the franchisees. So you'll have franchisees within your network who are doing really well, franchisees who are not doing really well. Challenges in terms of outside influences. If you're part of a bigger group, there are other things that are going on in the group that impact upon what you're doing. And again, we saw that in Prontoprint, that there were things that the market wanted, because Prontoprint floated on the USM. And at the end of it, when you're doing all of this other stuff that you've got to do within the business, what can happen is that franchisees themselves start to feel lonely, isolated, and they don't see the benefit of staying within the business. So they start to leave. And ultimately, if you've got a situation where franchisees are leaving, if you like, for not particularly positive reasons, negative reasons, then it's indication that the brand, the network, the franchise model is starting to break down a little. You might be feeling lonely and isolated, but ultimately you've got to look at what's happening with your franchisees, and if they're not being successful, and if they're not, their business aren't working, it's not going to work for you. And one of the things I learned very early is that franchisees only buy into you when you buy into them. So if you're trying to get them to work with you, they've really got to believe that you're there for them, and you are there to support them, and you are there for their benefit as much as your benefit as well. And it's all about getting that balance right so that it works for everyone. And that's about the Flourish aspect that we're bringing to this whole program. And the other point that I wanted to make very early this is about, again, success is about building commercial value. So you can have all of the nice aspects of the franchise model. You can have, great interaction with your network. You can have super conferences. You can have the best infrastructure that you've got within the business, and but it will only be enjoyable, and it will only be sustainable if at the end of the day there is commercial value in it for both parties. And again, going back to kind of the early stages, Colquick, the brand, is still around now and was in development when Prontoprint was developing. And where I am in the northeast of England, the guy who ran the Middlesbrough shop was one of their highest performing franchisees. He was turning over £1 million a year in business, and he was paying 10% of that back to the company. So he's paying £100,000 a year in royalties, franchisees back to the company. And I used to meet him at events, and people would talk to him and ask him and say why doing it. And his answer was always, because it gives me value. I'm staying within the business, I'm staying within the network, I'm staying within the brand because it gives me commercial value, and that is the essence of underpinning what happens. The example that I've got here is about Specsavers, and the photograph on the right is Specsavers when it started, which was a very low quality retail organisation that largely didn't even offer an eye test. You had to take your eye test from your ophthalmic optician and take it to them. And then the photograph on the left-hand screen is where Specsavers are today. So they have been on the journey, but they have taken their franchisees on that journey with them. And at the beginning, they were vilified within the ophthalmic sector. People hated them because they were bringing, cut price prescription glasses to the market. But now they are recognised as, one of the best places to go for your eye test, for your service, and they are literally worldwide. But they've only done that by bringing the franchisees with them at every stage of the development. And again, people will say, what's changed in franchising? And there have been lots of changes, there have been system changes, but ultimately what's the same is people, and the way that you work with people, the way that you treat people, the way that you manage people is a fundamental part of the success of the business, and that hasn't changed. And that's the great example that Specsavers have always worked with their people and brought their people with them.
So that brings us on to why Julie and I decided to work together and launch the Flourish Franchising Program. Really, when Julie reached out to me with this idea, my immediate response was, oh, that's what I needed when I was a franchisor. Although Bright and Beautiful was growing and was very successful and we were expanding, of course, I faced a lot of the challenges that Julie's just described at each stage of the growth. And so to collaborate with Julie's experience and mine together, we decided to launch Flourish Franchising. We're going to tell you quite a few interesting things and helpful things in this webinar, and ultimately we'll let you know about the program in case that is something that you're interested in as well. So how do you unlock the value of your franchise network so that it's thriving and it's high value and yet you're not burnt out? Because as Julie's described some of the challenges, you can just feel so worn down and alone as a franchisor, well, as any entrepreneur of a privately owned business, you can feel worn down at times. And a big part of what we're doing is working with franchisors in that supportive, consultative way that actually helps you grow. So I'm going to cover 4 foundations of a flourishing franchise. I do like a bit of alliteration, probably because I'm called Rachel Ray. Maybe I'm just fond of alliteration. Right. So the first part, in my opinion, I guess partly because of the years of being a business consultant, was to really keep the end in mind. So when I was training as a business consultant, we'd work on that initial consultation with a business owner. We would say Stephen Covey's, start with the end in mind. What's your ultimate exit plan? And most entrepreneurs, and it's still my experience now with my clients, look at you a bit blankly like, oh, I haven't really thought that far ahead. But that was in the back of my mind when I started Bright and Beautiful. But in the short term, I was much more just focused on growing and establishing the local business and then franchising it, 3, 4 franchisees. I was really excited. And when I started the business, we were in £60,000 of personal debt because of another business we'd had that had gone down, my husband's business. And so it was more like, yeah, survival, keep moving forward, keep growing. Then once we paid our debts off and things were growing, I started to look ahead at the horizon and say, okay, what do I really want out of this business? And I want to ask you on this call, what do you really want? You might have a relatively new franchise network. you might have a more established or a very well established, mature franchise network. It might be highly dependent on you, or maybe you've got a head office team. But once I got to the point where I had about 30 franchises and good coverage, and I did have a head office team and a franchise director and business development consultants. Again, I just wanted to look at the horizon and say, okay, but where do I want this business to take me? And I'd been trained to remember that a business is actually an asset. It's not, we can sometimes can be so attached to our business that we do work in it. It becomes part of our identity. But if you step back, your business is an asset and it's something that you can grow and it can become a legacy. So I just want you to think about this for a minute. Where would you like to be in 5 years, 10 years? What sort of personal income goals have you got from your business? And what would they provide you in terms of quality of life? What difference would it make if you had that increased income? But also, is there a point where you're like, okay, I would like to retire. I would like to pass this on to the next generation, or I would like to sell it. For me, it wasn't that I didn't love my business, I did, but I felt that I'd done as much as I could in my particular sector. In the domestic cleaning sector, we'd put so much effort into that brand, into the way we did things. And I felt that it was time to move on to a different opportunity. So for me, that was important. But the opportunity to have a seven-figure exit and the change that would make for my life was really appealing. So I was aligning my personal and commercial goals and thinking about where I wanted to grow my network. So just have a little think about that. Maybe write down some figures and some thoughts and some time frames. And that then helped me to define the drivers to value. So to do literally the basic sums to think about what my business was worth. I guess this is the accountant in me. So I did train as an accountant, but often with accountants, we can be looking a bit retrospective. Whereas actually, as I became a business consultant, I started to look ahead. So, for example, here is an example of how you might start to think about the value of your network. So imagine if one of your average franchisees has 50 customers. So for me, this is sort of illustrative of what Bright and Beautiful was like, not exact figures, but imagine for me, there's a franchisee, they have 50 customers who are on repeat, recurring standing orders for their housekeeping service. Each month, on average, each customer pays a franchisee 300 quid. So that means 12 transactions per year. So the average turnover per franchisee was 180 grand. Now, my management service fee was 10%. I also had a 2% marketing levy, but that obviously was just spent on national marketing. So the income for my head office as a franchisor was 10%, which was 18 grand per franchisee. Say at this particular point I had 30 franchises, then my MSF would have been 540. Now, obviously, you've then got to take your costs out. And if you're going to value a business, you're going to look at the lovely EBITDA, earnings before interest, tax, amortization. So really what that meant was I would go, okay, what's my net profit? What am I earning personally? Salary, car, any other benefits? And you would work out the annual earnings of that business. And then typically we multiply that by a factor, a multiple to estimate the value of a business. And that multiple does vary depending on things like repeat recurring revenue. Obviously, if someone's going to buy a business, they're going to look at the how consistent the earnings are, what the potential are for them to the earnings are for them to grow. And when Neighbourly Group acquired my business, I mean, they're experts. They literally buy businesses all the time. So, boy, did I have them looking through everything with a fine-tooth comb. I remember sitting at a boardroom table here in Manchester with a row of Texans opposite me, all their finance people, and they'd all come to grill me, which, fortunately, I had the information that they needed. But to build the value, you're looking at a multiple two, three, four, maybe more. I actually achieved 7 times multiple on my business because I'd made sure that I had all the elements in place to demonstrate the value to a potential purchaser. Now, this might be way on the horizon for you, or you might think, I would love this to happen in a couple of years, 5 years, 10 years. But if you have this value in mind, for me, that helped me look at my everyday activities and say, okay, how is this helping the network to grow? And then, of course, you've got this multiplying effect, which is the genius of franchising. So if I helped everybody in my network acquire a new customer per month, that is really exponential growth. If we increase that average transaction, okay, we have to put the prices up. We sell something else to our customers. If you can help each franchisee be aligned to these drivers personally in their business, their income is increasing, their business is flourishing. Obviously, your network is. I also put a different type of example in here, just a different type of business. Imagine maybe an estate agent or more of a commercial business where perhaps they have to have new customers every year because they're selling houses, for example, 200 houses per franchise. Maybe the average fee for the house sale is 1,500, but only one transaction per customer per year. The average franchisee turnover might be 300 grand. Maybe the MSF is a different percentage. The average MSF per franchisee, different number of franchisees. Maybe they've got 40 and they're coming up to like £1 million of MSF. So obviously this varies per business. And this is one of the things that we will help our franchisors do on this cohort privately, of course. We're not sharing very personal figures in a group, but there's an element of one-to-one consultation to help you. But once you've determined your long game and your drivers, you really are in a stronger position to keep boosting that value. And I just found that really motivational and really helpful in my day to day. It also helped me as I grew the network, which I'll talk about in a sec. So think about the hidden assets. Recurring revenue, how can you increase that, the element of recurring, the frequency of transaction? What's the lifetime value of a client? So again, I surveyed, I gathered data. For me, I think I had about 3.5 years was the lifetime value of a client. So Neighbourly Group knew when they were buying the business, okay, so the revenue is pretty stable for 3.5 years. Here's the long term. I was growing like 40% year on year. Obviously, franchising is a brilliant model because we tend to have 10-year agreements with a 5-year break clause. So again, if you can show franchisee retention, you can measure goodwill because you can be looking at the brand, the brand perception and penetration. Goodwill can be client surveys, franchisee surveys, team surveys. Goodwill is how bought into your brand are your team, your franchisees, your clients. These all affect the long-term value of your business. So have a think about this. Is there anything you need to work on to build these areas? Maybe write down a couple of notes for yourself. How could you increase recurring revenue? What do you think the lifetime value of a client is? Maybe if you know, tell us in the chat. But again, be proud of some of these things that you've built, because this stopping to reflect and to work on your business and to think about what you've done. You've got recurring revenue, you've got a franchise network, you've got goodwill. Well done. Sometimes this part of this reflection is not all about growing forward. And of course, that's a big part of it. It's also going, right, where am I at? What have I done? And stopping to pat yourself on the back, because quite often no one else will. We'll pat you on the back. So the second element of unlocking the value in your franchise is confident leadership and delegation. Who's feeling confident in their leadership? It can be so challenging, can't it? But leading with that vision and clarity that I've mentioned by being very clear on your drivers can really help you focus on what franchisees need to do to be commercially successful. And sometimes that can get so lost in the firefighting, responding, that we can lose sight of what actually the network management is about. And one of the reasons we can forget is the difficult franchisees can really draw our time and effort away from the things that are going well. So, anyone relate? Put your hand up, give us a wave if you've ever had a difficult franchisee. Oh yes, yeah, just two of us know. It goes with the territory, doesn't it? Here's a few of my horror stories, because we like to be real. That's what I really wanted when I was a franchisor. I wanted to be able to talk a little bit more candidly. And honestly, of course, I went to lots of great conferences, BFA conferences, and a few other things. And it is great to network. It really is. But sometimes you don't feel you can have the candid conversation because you think, oh, well, perhaps it's just me. I think we all have this. So, I mean, I remember one of the worst ones was one of my franchisees committing VAT fraud and just general fraud, as in lots of, backhanders discovered she'd set up another company and was invoicing people. So I had to take decisive action. Obviously, I wasn't going to accept fraud in the business. I had to report it to HMRC, had to terminate her franchise. But of course, although that was difficult, it actually gave a strong message to the rest of the network that we protect the brand, that we mean business, that we do things ethically, we do things well. So it turned round for the best, even though it is really intimidating when it happens. And again, some of the franchisors that I work with, these have been their crisis days when they've discovered that someone's doing something, murky behind the scenes, invoicing clients separately, having to terminate the franchise. But having that support and that mentor can really help us when we're faced those difficult things. But I think one of the things that I really found difficult was if, that little bit of the negativity, the little bit of the moaning, maybe there's a separate WhatsApp or Facebook group, or maybe when you're having your conferences, you can just see the little people. I think that again is just life, isn't it? But as a leader, it can be quite tricky. I don't know if anyone relates to that, but we can all start to feel a bit intimidated. And I always loved our conferences, and but that was just that little thorn in my side. So, I had a strategy. I always had a seating plan. They were very much, like school, they were put separately. There's certain people that I really didn't really want them in my peripheral vision. All the really the positive, engaged people were a bit more in my line of sight, and I made eye contact with them. And the people that were more difficult, you just worked with them and were polite and encouraging, and the strategies for it, which I'll talk about in a minute. But in terms of making sure I didn't feel intimidated, that was something that I did. And of course, underperformance. There's always going to be underperformers. However, our aim as franchisors is to really narrow those extremes and try and build every single franchisee up from where they're at. And that's really that really leads me on to say, how do we build consistent franchisee success? So just have a little think for a moment about your network. I mean, obviously, it's a bit like a bell curve, isn't it? There's always going to be, the sort of the outliers that are amazing and the difficult people or the underperformers at one end. But obviously, you want to just bring everybody upwards and more towards that center success. Really important is obviously the onboarding and training. And one of the things that I learned early on was don't just train people operationally, but ensure that you're putting as much effort to bring in a business mindset and vision and motivation and understanding the drivers and their long-term aims right from the beginning. So their personal goals, as I've just talked about, what is it that they really want to achieve from their franchise? For many people, it really is, it's their savings, isn't it? And it's going to be an income for their family. Now, it might be a second income. So I learned that, because a lot of, I guess I had young children, I'm like, yeah, working mums, come on, women, we can do this. We can. However, what I gradually realized is some of my franchisees had bought it as a hobby business or a sideline business or a second income. It wasn't really something they were going to give their full attention to. So I learned then to find that out early on in recruitment and ensure that I was training people and giving them the vision of what they could earn and they could accomplish through the business. And I found that really helped. And then, of course, in terms of ongoing development of the network, especially if you've got a maturer network now, it's those quarterly business performance reviews that the team did with the franchisees and working on their drivers. What can you improve this quarter? What can you work on? What income are you aiming for? And then putting the practical strategies in place. So that meant that even if somebody was underperforming, sometimes you'd have to have the difficult conversations of where do you want to go with this? Do you need to, where do you plan to renew your franchise when the time comes up? You know, if you're not going to renew, how can we help you have a saleable asset? So again, it can be a positive um, result for the network because they can see that someone's achieved a successful exit. Accountability, business performance reviews, growth plans, clear actions with that direction to renewal or exit. These are all the things that we help our franchisors put in place to really manage the growth of their business, of their franchisees, and to bring that consistent performance. So, how are we doing so far? I don't think I can see the chat, but Julie might be able to. Is
Yep.
this making sense? Give me a little wave if you're feeling that this is helpful.
Yep. No questions so far, Rachel. We can put
Keep
questions.
going, can we? Okay, all good. I've got a thanks, Scott, and a thumbs up from Sarah. Good. So it's making sense. We will pause for questions shortly. So the fourth element of developing the value of your franchise network is culture and communication. And I've talked a bit about like that business performance and drivers and the commercial aspects, because obviously that's essential, as Julie said right at the beginning. You know, if we're not being commercial and people aren't making money, you know, then people aren't joining because it's a charity or a hobby. It's about business success. But of course, one of the beauties of franchising is it can be motivational and there's camaraderie and fun. And that comes from, I mean, I know it's a cliche, but it's a cliche I actually like about being in business for yourself, but not by yourself. It's really great that we can have a bit of co-opetition. We can have positive fun in webinars, in conferences, and that helps keep franchisees engaged, doesn't it? Working on that relational aspect, cultural aspect, but without neglecting the commercial reality and maintaining the standards and keeping them high. It all needs to work together to reduce attrition, keep people engaged, and keep the network moving forward. So here you go. Here's a chance to have a little think about your main issues and maybe put the number in the chat. So, I mean, you know, wherever you're at in your journey, you might feel alone as a franchisor. I know I did at different times until I built my team, and then I had a great franchise director that really helped me. Or maybe you just feel a bit swamped, and you're actually doing too much for your franchisees at the moment, and you need to really structure your head office team. Maybe franchisees have unrealistic expectations, and you're going to have to define the parameters of what support looks like and make that support really effective, time efficient. Maybe you're a bottleneck for decisions. You know, do you really trust your team around you? Are you delegating well? If maybe number five, franchisee success is varying, or you're struggling to recruit new franchisees. So let's have a look in the chat. What
Well,
everybody said. Julie can probably see.
yeah, we've got a 4 and a 5, then we've got a 5 and a 6, and then we've got a 2 and a 3, and then we've got a 6 on its own, and then we've got a 4, 5, and 6.
Great. Well, We could have done with doing this as a poll, couldn't we? So I would say, based on that, 5 and 6 are our most popular answers. Let's just have a little look. So franchisee success varying, yeah, really common, isn't it? And recruiting new franchisees. Again, I mean, I loved that element of the business in the end. After initially resolving and working out, okay, what is my actual profile, then really nailing how to get the right people. I really enjoyed developing that whole marketing recruitment process, and once we'd really got it going well, we were receiving about 100 inquiries a month, of which we'd recruit 1 or 2 franchisees, so we could be selective. So there's a lot that can be done in that area. 2 and 3, doing too much, or franchisees having unrealistic expectations. Yeah, so often we just want to help and be so generous with our time, but it doesn't necessarily help them stand on their own 2 feet and really drive their business forward. So that we could definitely work on that. 4, bottleneck for decisions. Yeah. Um, so true. Sometimes, we've just got to work out a better mode of communication. So, question or a comment from Sarah. Don't you feel the recruitment landscape has significantly changed in the last few years? So much harder now. Does everyone agree with that? Is it different?
I think it's different in terms of the mechanics of it, and then that's changing literally on an ongoing basis. I think again in terms of the overriding element, it is all about the core values and the commercial value and the communication of that that's changed very significantly, Sarah. People's expectations maybe, yes, but again, building that into some of the messaging and Scott's mentioned, I think recruitment varies depending on the investment level. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've now got in the UK multi-brand franchisees, and those multi-brand franchisees are very experienced franchisees who are literally looking for an investment and have the money to put into it, but are looking for the return. Whereas, many people are still looking for a business that suits their lifestyle and is going to give them the income that they need. I think, Rachel, I always remember you saying something along the lines of almost if you can make domestic cleaning appear sexy and attractive in terms of the marketing and the communication messages, that was a challenge in itself, but it was one that you achieved very effectively. So it's about looking at the business itself and the messages that you've got to put into that.
Yes, definitely. And I do remember Pip from the BFA saying that I was the most proactive franchisor she'd ever met in terms of PR and just getting that story out there, which I took as a compliment. It was sort of a backhanded one. Um, because I firmly believe that we can't just advertise and promote within the franchising world. So I really had to be strategic on how to get the message beyond the normal channels because so many people don't actually understand what a franchise is. They don't know that they're looking for a franchise. They're trying to answer a different question, aren't they? As in, I want a different quality of life. I want to do things differently. Um, but I want a flexible business. And they don't realize that a franchise is the answer. So a big part of my marketing strategy, which was why I had so many leads per month, was because I was making sure that I was reaching people outside the franchise world.
Yeah,
So
interesting.
let's quickly give an overview of what the Flourish program is about, and then let's have some questions because obviously we want to hear from you guys. So is that okay? So we've launched this program to really help solve a lot of these issues and to really support franchisors. And I think Julie probably wants to talk us through a little bit about what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, again, going back to where we started, there's lots of great stuff going on within the franchise sector at the moment. The world has changed since COVID. We're all here today doing this online, and probably 6 years ago we'd have been in a room in London somewhere. So the world has changed, and we have to recognise that. But people are still the same fundamentally. And the one thing that I wanted to really discuss with Rachel when we had this very early stage was all about commercial value and putting something together that really enabled franchisors to increase the commercial value of their business and increase the commercial value for the network for the franchisees. And we've looked at various options in terms of how we do it. We've decided that, you know, the virtual world is where we are. So that's how we're working. We've put together a 6-month program, and it's to work with a small group of franchisors, and it's all focuses on commercial growth and commercial intelligence, basically. Then hopefully by some of the stuff that we've been talking about, you'll recognise the focus and where we're coming from. And George has left us, but George has put a comment in the chat box which says, strategic vision and value creation, love this. And again, that really is all what we're all about. Strategic vision for you, strategic vision for your franchisees, and value creation for everyone, basically. And we're going to do that by 6-month program. Every month we've got a focus, a themed group workshop meeting, which is an element of the business model, which is focused towards, you know, value growth, commercial intelligence. We're providing the group learning. We're providing a check-in every month. So beginning of the month, first week, we'll do the group session, check-in week 3 to bring everyone together again to look at what's happening within the business and how you've managed to hopefully work on some of the issues and the challenges that we've been discussing. And then we're also offering some private one-to-one check-ins as well throughout the programme as well. So we are covering, hopefully, all of the bases, but everything that we're doing is really about commercial focus and commercial growth.
Yeah, and I mean, as I said, this was the sort of program I would have loved as a franchisor because it's funny because again, no nonsense, get on with it, time efficient. You know, you've got a business to run. I didn't want people that were fluffy coaches or were just going to tell me motivational stuff. I wanted something that was structured and was going to help me grow and enhance my franchise management capabilities, which is subtly different than general management, isn't it? Managing a franchise network is different because they're not employees and you know they are franchises and it's quite different. So again, making sure that you're aligning your business and personal goals and you've got a proper growth plan for your franchise network and which includes when to say no and how. Over to you again, Julie. Take it in turns. A bit sick of my voice.
And as a result of that, you know, we all recognise that, and we have recognised that resilience is one of the key factors to success. For me, resilience comes from the knowledge and really the sound knowledge that you're doing it properly. You've set it up properly. You've got the right structure in place. You've got the right teams in place. Things go wrong. Things go wrong in life. Things go wrong in business, competition, markets, you know, etc., etc. And to get through that, you've got to have the belief that what you're doing is the right course of action. It's worthwhile, and that builds resilience within the team. But again, that's got to come from the top, and that's the person who ultimately owns the business, is managing the business, is the CEO of the business, is one of the key parties in the business. And if you haven't got it, if you don't buzz, the business doesn't buzz, basically. So one of our aims is to help you individually, collectively, build resilience within yourself, and then pass that on to the team and ultimately to the franchisees as well, because they've got to be resilient to succeed. We're going to look at techniques for franchisee engagement and business practices and business planning, and strategies, as Rachel said earlier, specific strategies to increase your network income, to not just say, okay, that's what we're doing, that's what we're going to continue to doing, to look at little changes that can be made, but ultimately have that multiplying effect. Because whether you've got 15 franchisees, 50 franchisees, 100 franchisees, if everyone puts £1,000 a month onto the business, that's a big impact for you. And yeah, blended program that combines online, face-to-face, and again, the cohort support that comes from working within the group as well.
So lots of topics covered. just give you a quick overview, but certainly that start with the end in mind, and that it's very practical in terms of economics and value. Getting the balance right in terms of what your franchise offering looks like, good franchise leadership, building that team, marketing and recruitment of the right type of franchisees. But this isn't just it's not a training program, it's a consulting program where we'll help you implement and get these things happening in your business. Making sure the business is not dependent on you. Ultimately, when I was able to achieve that sale to Neighbourly Group, it's because I, again, had made myself redundant. I had a succession plan. They knew they were buying a business that was going to work without me, and it did, and it does, and it's grown since. But franchise network management, the supportive and motivating element, as well as the dealing with problems. We will have surgeries and brainstorms to solve real-time problems, so that we can deal with things that are impactful to you in the current. And then scaling, planning your exit, all of those areas covered in a mix of either the group cohort or privately. So the outcome, definitely clarity on the commercial direction of your business, a solid, scalable, profitable model that is ready for long-term investment or sale, and a confident, motivated franchise network, which then does increase capital value for both of you, for both you and your franchisees. So as Julie said, it's a 6-month program, 2 meetings per month, one topic based and one that's more the check-in accountability, making it group, time efficient for you. Group support with peers, a WhatsApp group, and additional support available where it's required along the way. So that was a whistle-stop tour, but you can use the QR code to see our online brochure. And of course, you can contact either of us with questions. Yes, we have an application process, a questionnaire to check that there's a good fit and that the program's right for you. So if you scan that QR code, you can see what the program is about, and you can complete the questionnaire, and it will come through to Julie and I. So importantly, though, what questions? Thanks so much for listening as we've shared this content, but we'd really love, I'll stop sharing my screen. We'd really love to hear your questions and hear your feedback. So anyone got anything that they would love to ask, a burning question? Don't be shy. You might have to put your cameras on so we can see your lovely faces. Haha, Scott. Thank you.
I just thought I'd pop in. Yeah, I've nothing really to say. I think, I love these calls. You always cover a great wealth of things, and I think the program looks great for franchisors. I think, some of the points that I'd mentioned previously, around point 2 and 3, that there are challenges out there at the minute. And I think, uh, hopefully it will help people sort of streamline their operations. It's easy to get stuck between management and leadership. When you're providing help, you can over micromanage versus truly leading and letting people get on with their operations, and finding that balance is key. And the recruitment piece, seems to come up on every call that there's recruitment challenges out there that we're not seeing at the moment. But I think that's because of where we're positioned in the current market. There's if you're looking 200 grand for a quick service restaurant, you might be struggling at the moment, but sub 10 for a pet franchisee seems to be a lot of demand in this sector. So yeah, it's very interesting.
Yeah, it is sector specific, and it is thinking about your target franchisee, isn't it? And where
Mm,
they might be looking and what they're thinking about at the moment in terms of
mm.
business opportunities or jobs or income opportunities, and how the franchise will fit. But yeah, thanks, Scott. Thanks for that feedback.
This has asked an interesting question. It said, what are the key requirements for a potential user of this service? So I think I'll give my view, Rachel, and then you can obviously give your view. I think we've covered a lot of the, like the kind of core values that we're offering, as it were, in terms of all of the commercial aspects. In terms of the methodology, we had an interesting conversation with someone, because we've done a few of these events now. We had an interesting conversation, Chris, with someone who had developed or has developed their franchise largely, on their own, and to some degree has never taken a great deal of advice, but has, done very well in terms of, what they've got to so far. And the comment was how we would work with them, basically how they would work with us. And my answer to that is always that everything that we do is in collaboration. So ultimately, it's only successful if it works, as in, based upon the knowledge and expertise and understanding that we've got from, the many years of franchise development, Rachel's got from her role of, selling the franchise and building it for value. But also if the business owner, the franchisor, if you like, buys into it as well. So it's got to be collaboration based upon ending up with a result that is right for the individual business. And I think one of the big pitfalls that people fall into is believing there is a one size fits all solution, and there isn't. Even within any sector, whether you're in domiciliary care, whether you're in the tuition market, whether you're in the pet care market, whatever sector that you're in, it's about finding the solution that's right for you and your business. And that's different to every business that's in it. So, several years ago, we did some work in the domiciliary sector and helped a new franchisor, but an established domiciliary care provider. And it was all about working with the team, working with the directors, getting to know and understand the values of the business as well as the core services provided, and end up with a franchise model that everyone believed in from the beginning, basically. And again, in terms of that working relationship, it's dynamic, it's about, collaboration, but it's working to a place that everyone's happy. So there's got to be ticks in the box from everyone that's involved in that decision making and development. And then ultimately, hopefully, we've got something that's got the best chance of commercial success. So I guess the answer is people have got to be open, and honest and looking to grow and develop the business. Sorry, Rachel, that was a long answer to it. You kind of bring your...
No, but that sums it up well, doesn't it? I was thinking when I choose to work with my clients, be they a franchisor or entrepreneur, I guess, yeah, I have to feel that they're in an ethical business is essential, isn't it? That it's, set up honestly and well with good intentions to be a service that actually helps society in some way. That's something that's important for me. And then exactly as Julie said, I think people aligned with like, I want to grow, I'm ambitious, I want to develop, and I want to listen and apply and work collaboratively with the cohort. Not that, there's too much interaction, because I think that's something that can be difficult in cohorts. You think like, well, I haven't got time to listen to everybody else. I really got to work on my own business. It's not like that. It's not like we're going to be spending too much time on each other. We will share, but there'll be a fine balance. So for me, it's people that are willing to collaborate and want that support, but are actually really keen to grow their business and really ambitious about that and receptive to our help. But Julie and I will be bending over backwards to help and support each person on the program.
And do you have red flags as well? Do you have things where you go, no, we're not going to go down that route?
In terms of who we would take on the
Yeah.
program?
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
yes. I mean, if you didn't really believe in their business model, and you didn't think it was actually that commercially viable, or you didn't really have rapport with the person because they weren't easy to communicate with for some reason, those are red flags for me if I was going to work with someone on a one-to-one basis. So the same goes for the group,
Yeah.
but I think everybody we've met so far through these webinars and things, they're going to be ticks in the box because there's, great people involved. But it's very important to say, yeah, there are some red flags. What about
Yeah.
you, Julie?
Yeah, absolutely. And, it would be about people can end up in a situation where, to some degree, what they've got hasn't got the best chance of commercial success because of some element of structural weakness, whatever it is. That's absolutely fine, because obviously our expertise is about helping to change that. You've got to have that willingness to change, and you've got to want to change. So again, it's about the ethical approach to say, okay, this has got areas of weakness. That's fine. We can change them. We can amend them. We can improve them. Or sometimes just by making, you know, small little tweaks and changes, that's enough to have that release and multiplying effect. But yeah, people have got to want to do it. They've, you know, to some degree, they've got to be positive about coming on this journey with us, because again, negativity within the group is damaging for everyone. So, you know, we're not all expecting to be, you know, all singing, all dancing cheerleaders, but you've got to be open to change and positive to that change and really prepared to take it on. And because we haven't got the time, we haven't got the energy to go through a big counselling session to get you to where you need to be from a mindset point of view. This is about making changes within the business, which will have reasonably immediate, you know, commercial value and make changes that ultimately, you know, suits and benefits everyone.
So if I'm out and about and I'm talking to franchisors, what's a good thing for me to listen out for? What kind of things are they going to be saying that I'm going to be thinking, oh, I need to introduce this person to Julie and Rachel?
I think, you know, any of the standard challenges that franchisors face, frustrated in lack of growth or frustrated due to the inconsistent performance of franchisees, certain people underperforming, doing their head in, you know, just a small group doing really, really well. You know, it's quite a standard thing, challenges to, or even just feeling a bit overwhelmed and swamped, like, or not being able to see the long-term vision. You know, sometimes whether it be a franchisor or just an entrepreneur, you know, there's that roller coaster of like, oh, I'm trapped and oh, I wish you know, I'm exhausted, I'm fed up, I wish I could get out of this. Well, at the right time, grow a business so that at some point you can have a successful exit. So really, any challenge that's draining them or making them feel frustrated with their franchise network, we will be addressing in this program.
Yeah, uncertainty, you know, lack of clarity, so where you're going with the business, etc. But just that, you know, probably a lot of it is uncertainty about what they're doing, if they're doing the right thing. And again, you know, with most businesses, they are doing the right thing. You know, 80 or 90% of it's right, but it's the changes that you make that have that multiplying factor.
Mm.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Well, thanks so much for participating, guys. Certainly can email either of us. And, you know, we will send you information about the program as well.